This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jill Newbronner. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba vows to reform the ruling coalition after a punishing lower house election, which left no party with a clear mandate to lead the world's fourth largest economy. The yen weakens to a three-month low against the US dollar as Japan's election result casts doubt over monetary policy as well as the economy. North Korea warns the South of a forceful response should its military again send drones into its territory in what Pyongyang calls an infringement of its sovereignty. Taiwan and the Philippines are set for more extreme weather, with Manila issuing a fresh storm warning just days after Trami killed more than 100 people. Ahead on East Asia Tonight, China watches closely to see who will win the US presidential election, with an aim to better gauge how the outcome can affect Beijing's relations with its strategic rival. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has vowed to stay in office, saying he would not create a political vacuum after the ruling coalition he leads failed to secure a parliamentary majority for the first time in 15 years. The Liberal Democratic Party and junior partner Komeito only managed to secure 215 seats. That's down from the 279 previously. The result also falling short of Mr. Ishiba's declared victory line of winning at least a majority of 233 seats in the Diet's 456-member House of Representatives.
A stunning defeat in Sunday's snap elections for Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. Having been dealt a blow by the electorate barely a month into the top job, Mr. Ishiba says he understands the reasons for the defeat.
政治と金ということについて、国民の皆様方の疑念、不信、怒り、これが払拭されていないということが最大のものであったというふうに認識をいたしておるところでございます。
The verdict by the voters has cost two cabinet ministers, as well as Komeito's leader Keiichi Ishii, their jobs. The LDP election chief Shinjiro Koizumi, son of former Premier Junichiro Koizumi, has resigned. As for the Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba is vowing to stay in power, one way or another. The 67-year-old Premier says the LDP accepts the voters' thoughts and will reflect on it.
今回の厳しい結果は、自由民主党の改革姿勢に対する国民の皆様方の厳しいご指摘と受け止めております。もっと謙虚に真摯に誠実に国民と向き合えと、自由民主党は反省が足りないと、そういうようなお声を頂戴し、ご指摘を賜ったものというふうに強く認識をいたしております。
The Prime Minister had called the snap election just days after he took office on October 1st in a bid to win public mandate. But his gamble appears to have backfired. There's been growing voter discontent over cost of living pressures and the LDP's slush fund scandal, which drove his predecessor Fumio Kishida to step down.
それに対して今は結構不安要素が多いので、ちょっとなかなか前向きになれないとこがあるにはあるんで、それが今後もっと変わってくるとはいいと思うんですけど、
裏金問題が今になったことを聞いてるっていうところが、今回敗因の大きなところではないかと。
石破総理に変わってからやっぱり大きいんじゃないかなと思います。どうしてもやはり見た目であったりとかの話をするのは良くないですけれども、雰囲気写真においてもやっぱり頼りないっていう印象は誰しも持ってしまった結果なんじゃないかなと思います。
Now, Mr. Ishiba is left with a weakened coalition, which could make it more challenging for him to push his party's policies across in the world's fourth largest economy. The biggest winner is main opposition Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, taking 148 seats, up from 98 previously.
やっぱり
裏金問題について通常国会でも一生懸命この問題を正してまいりましたけれども、臨時国会で本来は議論すべきテーマを残念ながらきちっと解明をしないで、解散をしてしまいましたので、引き続き厳しく正していく、それが逆に功を奏したのではないのかなと思います。もちろんこれは自民党側の、失敗でもありましたけれども、逆に野党第一党が、その先頭に立って、これをやっぱり正して本当の筋改革をやってほしいと、そういう思いを結集することができたのではないかなと思います。
By law, the parties now have 30 days to figure out a grouping that can govern, a crucial step given that Japan continues to face economic headwinds and a tense security situation in East Asia.
Well, all that political uncertainty casting doubt over the path of the country's monetary policy and economy. Traders are speculating the instability could lead the Bank of Japan to push back the timeline of its rate hike. And that is drawing out the yen bears in full force. Now, the yen slid to a 3-month low of around 154 against the greenback. It's currently still weaker, trading near the 153 level against $1. The yen's drubbing is lifting Japanese stocks, however, as it will boost demand for the country's exports. The Nikkei 225 ending 1.8% higher. Analysts expect more volatility in Japanese assets as long as political uncertainty prevails. Well, let's get the latest from CNA's Michio Ishida. Joining us live from Tokyo, Michio, the voters have made their feelings clear, yet Shigeru Ishida says he is staying on. How does he plan to achieve that?
Well, actually, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner Komeito lack 18 lower house seats. And without a majority, Mr. Ishiba cannot be re-elected prime minister unless he wins support from opposition party members. Now, Mr. Ishiba said he will analyze the policies of opposition parties, which won considerable amount of seats in the general election, and cooperate where they can find common ground or on issues public resonated during the election campaign. Now, he did not mention of a possible coalition. Analysts expect the LDP to approach Democratic Party for the People, which increased the number of seats from 7 to 28. Now, Diet has to be convened within 30 days after the general election, according to the Constitution. And the Prime Minister's elections will have to take place in both the lower house and the upper house. And if they vote differently, the lower house decision will overrule the upper houses.
Now, if Mr. Ishiba does indeed succeed staying in power, what steps does the LDP have to take to appease all the voter displeasure that they've felt? Something has to change.
Well, Mr. Ishiba said in his news conference that he plans to reform the party from its fundamentals. Now, the slush handling of public funds has been the top cause of the LDP's loss of public trust, according to exit polls. And Mr. Ishiba vowed to ban political donations, which has been the cause of problems. 46 candidates ran in the general election linked to the scandal, and 28 did not make it. Now, indicating the public's lack of trust. Mr. Ishiba vowed to make sure monthly communication and transportation allowances allocated to lawmakers are transparent. And he aims to form a third party to monitor. And he vowed to address public concern on higher consumer prices, on food, on fuel, and support those not gaining higher wages. But for such issues that require a budget, he needs the cooperation from opposition parties now that his ruling coalition does not hold a majority.
Exactly. And this bolden opposition parties, if we look at it through their eyes, can we expect any power plays, if at all?
Well, Constitutional Democratic Party's President Yoshihiko Noda said he aims to go for the post of prime minister. He said he will try to gain support from other opposition parties. And in theory, if opposition parties come together, it is not impossible. Now, let me give you some examples back in history. There has been a case in 1993. A non-LDP government was formed. A 9-party coalition elected Morihiro Hosokawa as prime minister. But in a year, the coalition fell apart. And in 1994, an LDP Socialist Party and party called Sakigake Alliance was formed. The Socialist Party leader, Tomiichi Murayama, became prime minister. So there could be an interesting political game played.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you so much, Michio Ishida, there reporting live to us from Tokyo. Well, we have more insights on the election outcomes. We'll be speaking with Kei Koga later this hour on East Asia Tonight. He's an associate professor from the Public Policy and Global Affairs program, School of Social Sciences at the Nanyang Technological University. Stay with us for that. The Philippines has issued a fresh weather warning just days after deadly storm Trami killed more than 100 people. A new storm is set to strengthen into a typhoon by tomorrow and bring heavy rain and severe winds to the region. Tropical storm Kongre is currently churning northwesterly across the Philippine Sea. It is forecast to pass close to a number of small Philippine islands in the north on Wednesday, before making landfall over the northeastern Taitung County in Taiwan late Thursday. Meanwhile, Trami made landfall in Vietnam yesterday, lashing the Southeast Asian nation with heavy rains and powerful winds. Trees you see there uprooted, traffic disrupted as it slammed into the coast near Da Nang. Trami's rain bands also affecting China's southernmost island province of Hainan. Authorities expect heavy rainfall to continue until Wednesday. Coming up on East Asia Tonight, Hyundai Motor pledges to ensure its electric vehicles remain attractive to U.S. consumers, as a government subsidy could be removed depending on who wins the presidential elections. And a rally in gold prices to record highs is dulling its appeal to Chinese consumers who are holding back from buying jewelry as the country's economy remains lackluster. Get you some business news next. And Hyundai Motor said its strategy in the U.S. is to improve the quality of its electric vehicles so they remain attractive to local consumers, even in the absence of subsidies. The CEO of the South Korean carmaker laid out the firm's path as the tight U.S. presidential election could change Washington's energy policy. Hyundai Motor CEO Chang Jae-hoon said the firm is ready for whoever ends up in the White House. He adds the carmaker should rely on its competitiveness instead of subsidies, which are temporary anyway. The U.S. is Hyundai's biggest market, accounting for nearly 30% of its global sales. Hyundai is one of the Korean companies that invested billions in the country, drawn by the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act. Under that, the government pays up to $7,500 of subsidies to those buying EVs made in the U.S. While Democratic candidate U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris supports the act, her Republican opponent, Donald Trump, has vowed to reverse it. But Hyundai's EV battery-making partner in Indonesia, LG Energy Solutions, is less sanguine. The Korean firm, which supplies Tesla and Hyundai Motor, expects the result of the U.S. presidential election to have a significant impact on the EV market. The battery maker adds it has a, quote, conservative view of revenue growth next year and will significantly cut capital expenditure due to slowing demand for EVs. Now, it made the comments after booking a 39% on-year drop in third quarter profit. South Korea's finance minister has vowed to, quote, respond promptly to fight excessive volatility in the won after the currency fell more than 5% to a 3-month low last week. Now, the slump has fueled concerns regarding the country's financial stability, particularly against the backdrop of the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Now, many in Asia are increasingly worried about the volatility of their currencies amid a resurgence of the dollar and the prospect of sweeping trade tariffs should Donald Trump be re-elected. South Korea, however, is known to regularly step into the market to curb excessive volatility in the won. Earlier this year, Seoul issued a rare warning to traders when the won breached 1,400 per dollar. The rhetoric lending some support to the Korean currency, which has rebounded slightly against the greenback. Now, demand for gold in China, the world's biggest consumer, slid by more than 20% in the third quarter. That's as record prices and a sluggish economy hurt consumption, particularly for jewelry. Total demand slumped 22% on year to 218 tons in the 3 months to September, and that's according to Bloomberg calculations based on data from the China Gold Council. Jewelry consumption tumbled 29% to 130 tons, while that for bars and coins fell 9% to 69 tons, you see there. Gold prices have rallied by about a third this year, rising to all-time highs last week. Increased buying by global central banks, as well as sustained safe haven demand from investors, have hoisted prices, but that rally has made jewelry purchases more expensive, particularly for Chinese consumers who are already feeling the pinch from a prolonged slowdown in the economy. They are abstaining from splurging on luxury goods and bullion, preferring to stay cautious amid uncertain job prospects. Let's turn to some equities next, and greater Chinese markets ending in the green ahead of a key government meeting. The Shanghai and the Shenzhen each advancing more than 0.6%, while the Hang Seng logging mild gains. Our state news agency Xinhua said China's top legislative body is scheduled to meet next week. No mention of the agenda, but economists are closely watching for announcements on fiscal measures to support the lackluster economy. The Chinese central bank has also unveiled so-called outright reverse repurchase agreements as a monetary policy tool. The move is aimed at improving banking system liquidity. Shares in the electric vehicle unit of defaulted property developer China Evergrande tumbled after talks for a stake sale in the company fell through. Stocks ending nearly 9% lower, coming in at 30 Hong Kong cents. Now, Evergrande Auto has been looking to sell a 29% stake, along with an option to sell an additional 29.5% since May. Over the weekend, the EV startup said it ceased discussions, but affirmed it would continue to seek potential buyers and opportunities to divest shares in the company. Evergrande Auto started off with ambitions to compete with Tesla and become a top EV maker in China. The firm's market value topped $80 billion at its peak. That was 3 years ago. But in the first half of 2024, the EV unit nearly tripled its net loss to $2.84 billion from a year earlier. The EV firm was swept up in a debt crisis that engulfed its parent company, Evergrande Group. Well, China's industrial profits declined at a faster pace in September as policymakers continue to battle deflation to revive economic growth. Profits at large industrial firms plunged 27% on year last month, widening their losses in August. Now, this marks the steepest decline so far this year. Deepening deflation in factory gate prices weighed on company earnings. In addition, a high base registered 1 year ago also affected the numbers. The data joins a string of disappointing figures that highlight China's faltering economy. Policymakers rolled out a barrage of measures last month to boost confidence and support stocks and the property sector. But analysts have called for further measures to restore momentum. All eyes now on China's top legislative body meeting next month. Economists expect policymakers to approve further fiscal stimulus to revive growth in the world's second-largest economy. Many Hong Kong businesses have long relied on mainland Chinese shoppers for sales, but the city has been losing its shine. Industry players are urging the government to do more to bring the tourists back. CNA's Melody Chan with this report.
During China's recent peak travel season, the streets of Hong Kong were a far cry from before the pandemic, when mainland Chinese tourists came in droves to shop.
I'm here at Hong Kong Tsim Sha Tsui's Canton Road, one of the busiest streets for people coming for luxury shopping. And it's a Sunday afternoon, but as you can see, it's not really crowded.
Shops say the lack of their usual visitors means business has dropped up to 50%. The reason? Mainland Chinese tourists are no longer looking for luxury shopping and the typical fixed tours.
团的话，它可能会有一些固定的时间要去集合，就可能没有那么自由，可能还是以实用为主吧，就是你自己需要的。那也不是说我来这边就是要买很多没有用的东西，还是要以自己实用的为主。
Instead, Chinese tourists are seeking experiences, such as taking photos at trending spots. At this basketball court in Kennedy Town, they are jockeying for the perfect snapshot of the view of the western edge of Hong Kong Island. They usually put these pictures up on Xiaohongshu, the Chinese version of Instagram, to 打卡 or check in.
首先是在网上面被这个图或者是别人的这个视频所吸引，然后自己再来实地感受完之后，发现可能在自媒体当中出现的东西会让你觉得更吸引你，但其实实际上来说就是一个景点，然后看一下这个风景，其实拍拍照留个念，其实就过去了。实际到了之后，我觉得还是要感受为主。
Another hotspot is Yau Ma Tei Police Station, a filming location for popular Hong Kong movies such as Infernal Affairs and The Young and Dangerous. But the area has more potential, and industry players are urging the government to maximize it.
我哋油麻地呢一個舊區嚟嘅，咁一啲特色嘅騎樓啊，包括我哋即係距離唔夠200米嘅有一個叫果欄。即係生果批發市場嘅跟住咧就有油麻地嘅戲院。但係我哋睇到咧，淨係嗰一條街嘅啫，人流咧就喺油麻地警署，就唔去嗰啲地方嘅。咁我哋覺得咧，就政府就應該係有一啲嘅規劃，唔同嘅機構，即係點樣去聯合咗之後咧，就係令到嗰啲人流唔係淨係去警署門口打卡嗰10分鐘，其實佢可以喺呢一區多一啲嘅嗰個遊覽。
Hong Kong businesses are also trying to cash in on this new flavor of travel. For instance, Prince Traveller used to provide students history and cultural education. Now, it has expanded to offer in-depth tours to domestic and foreign visitors. As the tourism sector continues to adapt to the new style of mainland Chinese holiday makers, industry players say it's up to the city to make strides to fulfill its potential. Melody Chan, CNA, Hong Kong.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, we return to our top story. Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba facing a weakened mandate after his ruling coalition fell short of achieving a majority at polls for the first time since 2009. We'll speak to Kei Koga of Nanyang Technological University on the future ahead for Tokyo when we come back. You're watching East Asia tonight. North Korea warns the South of a forceful response should its military again send drones into its territory in what Pyongyang calls an infringement of its sovereignty. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba vows to reform the ruling coalition after a punishing lower house election which left no party with a clear mandate to lead the world's fourth largest economy. And Japan's Nikkei 225 index climbs, but the yen drops against the dollar amid that political uncertainty following the elections. Well, let's stay in Japan. For more insight into the political situation in Japan, we're joined by Kei Koga. He is Associate Professor of Public Policy and Global Affairs Program, School of Social Sciences at the Nanyang Technological University. Now, he is speaking to us from Singapore. Professor Koga, first, is the election loss a reflection more on the LDP as a party than Shigeru Ishida himself? What's the future of Ishida?
So Prime Minister Ishiba prioritized the regaining public confidence as the key focus for now. He considers the public dissatisfaction with the LDP's political reform efforts was the main cause of the landslide defeat. So initially, the Ishiba was expected to have the strong support and was seen as the forerunner for the political reform within the LDP. But then the party became entangled in the internal the politics and then failed to implement significant reforms despite the slush fund scandals. So just before the election, also the LDP faced the public skepticism over its financial support of the 20 million yen to the two branches that included the individuals who did not receive party endorsement because of the scandals. So this lack of the progress did not help. And then the Ishida public support dropped. And then to gain the confidence, he instructed the party to actually immediately implement the measures such as the abolition of the policy activity funds in the LDP.
Right. So all this has led to a very deep distrust by the public. Going forward, we can expect many days of political jockeying for power. I'm curious, is a coalition government the only way forward? What other trajectories could there be?
So I think there are two things that we need to actually find out. The first is we need to see if Ishiba can maintain his prime ministership. He must convene the special diet session within the 30 days after yesterday's election and seek for support for his prime ministership. To secure the simple majority, Ishiba will need the support from the opposition parties as the LDP no longer holds the majority. So now, if we look at the opposition party, Yoshihiko Noda, leader of the Constitutional Democratic Party, is willing to have willing to run for the prime ministership. So the Ishiba is now assessing whether he would gain enough support to remain in the office. So this is going to be his top priority. But then secondly, the LDP will need the compromise with the other policies on various policies, such as the economic policies and the constitutional reform or defense budget. So they need to actually negotiate and then hold hard dialogues with the opposition parties for sure.
Yeah, I understand. With the rise of the opposition in this election, what does that mean for the Diet? Do they want to get into bed with the LDP given the kind of distrust there is among people?
Yes, so there are the distrust from the people in the public, and also there are certain the opposition parties that actually goes against the LDP's practice for the reform, because they didn't actually make the significant reforms to change the party politics in the LDP. So for the coalition, though, I think the LDP needs to negotiate with the Constitutional Democratic Party for particularly because it gets the majority or the landslide victory for the gaining seats in the Diet, and then. But then at the same time, the other options that the Ishiba is thinking about is cooperate with the various political parties on the issue-by-issue basis. And then in this scenario, the LDP would need to find areas of the policy convergence with other parties.
Yeah, and this will absolutely slow down the process of government, wouldn't it? I'm wondering, we're in for what's perceived to be a period of instability in Japan. How does this affect the yen and future financial policies?
So yes, the political uncertainty would not have the positive effect on the Japan's economic policies. And then much remains to be seen as Japan's economic policy depends on the type of the coalition government. The Ishiba administration would likely avoid the raising interest rates, which aligned with the Japanese central bank's statement in September. But at the same time, the Constitutional Democratic Party is likely to push for the normalization of the Japan's financial policy, which would involve the raising interest rates as well. So this actually creates the complications for the Japan's financial policy. And also, we need to also take into account the U.S. financial policies, which will be largely shaped by the presidential election in November really soon. So I think these are the uncertainties we are facing right now.
Absolutely. And that, brings me to my next question, because Japan is a linchpin in many regional organizations such as the Quad and AUKUS. I'm sure many of their partners must be on the outside looking in as well. How are they being perceived by the international community, you think?
I think the Japanese diplomacy is relatively stable. No matter who would be the next prime minister, they actually emphasize the importance of the U.S.-Japan alliance and also the cooperation with the like-minded state. But in terms of the taking initiative, I think the domestic confusion creates the big obstacle for Japan to actually do proactively facilitating the security dialogue or like security their policies, and then this needs to be seen, and then the international community would actually look at the what kind of the coalition government Japan is going to make in the future.
Just a quick last question, Professor. The special parliament session needs to be convened in November to select a prime minister. How might that play out? And also, what must the LDP do before then? Because things certainly do have to change.
Yes, so the LDP needs to, again, how they could ensure the majority in the special diet, because otherwise they would not be able to gain the prime ministership. And in that sense, they need to actually have the dialogue with the Constitutional Democratic Party. Again, like the biggest opposition party right now. But at the same time, the leader of the opposition party is trying to get the prime ministership as well. So I think like this is going to be the focus. What kind of the dialogues and the negotiations they could actually make, and then it also guides the future of the Japanese politics and foreign policy.
All right, we thank you so much for your input there, Associate Professor Kei Koga from the National Technological University. Well, the outcome of the U.S. presidential race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will be watched closely all over the world, perhaps nowhere more closely than in the Chinese capital, Beijing. China is America's biggest economic competitor and is vying to become the leading global superpower. Kate Fisher examines what impact the vote could have on the world's most significant geopolitical relationship.
For Trump, the threat of China is a rallying cry on the presidential campaign trail.
Radical left politicians and incompetents like Kamala Harris have waged a war on your Commonwealth, assaulted your oil and gas jobs, and sold off your manufacturing jobs to China.
Trump's opponent's delivery couldn't be more different, but Harris's message is essentially the same. The U.S. will not let China prevail.
I will make sure that America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century, and that we strengthen, not abdicate, our global leadership.
Trump's weapon of choice in his crusade against Chinese dominance is tariffs.
For decades, nobody paid, China never paid 1 penny, not 1 penny to us. Until I came along, they paid hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs and taxes under me.
President Biden's maintained and in some cases expanded those tariffs.
A 100% tariff on electric vehicles made in China. People say, wow.
Harris is expected to continue these policies if she wins. But Trump has pledged to go further, proposing blanket import duties of 60% or higher on goods from China. That could cost the typical US household more than $2,600 a year, according to the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
We have controlled experiment, in a sense, of the Trump tariffs and how that affected manufacturing. There have been a couple of high-quality studies which indicated that they did not save any manufacturing jobs and probably lost manufacturing jobs on net. There was retaliation last time. There will be massive retaliation against the more massive tariffs this time.
The next president will also have to manage the risk of military retaliation too, dealing with incidents like this one, as a Chinese warship cuts in front of an American destroyer in the Taiwan Strait. Beijing claims the self-governed island as its territory and considers the passage of warships from other nations as a challenge to its sovereignty. Harris has declined to say whether she would use military force to defend Taiwan, which is consistent with US policy. Instead, she's emphasized the importance of military communications with China and supporting Taiwan's ability to defend itself. But Trump has dodged that question and demanded that Taiwan pay for US protection.
So what happens when Donald Trump says, I don't care about defending Taiwan? China thinks there's an opportunity there, and then we change our mind after having given the green light. That's where rhetoric can really matter.
And that's where the two candidates really differ when it comes to China policy.
So at that level of conceptual, substantive policy, there are some areas where agreement has emerged. Full stop. Harris and Trump are very different people, and the way they make decisions in crises is extraordinarily different.
Their vision for the US to prevail against China may be shared, but they have very different ways of achieving it. In the end, it may not make much difference to the substance of the US relationship with China, who becomes the next tenant of this place, since taking a tough line on China is one of the few areas of agreement in US politics. Harris and Trump may differ in style and rhetoric, but the US's competition with China is unlikely to change. Kate Fisher, CNA, Washington.
North Korea has accused South Korea of having political purposes behind the drones it claims Seoul flew over its territory. Pyongyang has threatened to respond with force if another such flight occurs. North Korea claims that data from a drone that crashed in the capital earlier this month shows that it took off from a South Korean border island in the Yellow Sea on the 8th of October. The North says this is an infringement of sovereignty. North Korea insists that South Korean drones flew over Pyongyang at least 3 times this month to distribute leaflets. The military released this map, allegedly showing the route of the downed drone you see in green there. Now, the North claims to have found 238 flight plans and logs on the drone. Seoul's defense ministry has dismissed Pyongyang's claims as not worth verifying or worth a response.
지난 10년간 북한은 12차례 이상 여러 대의 무인기를 우리 영공에 침투시켜 우리의 안전을 위협해 왔습니다. 이에 대한 반성은커녕 적반하장의 억지 주장은 후한 무치일 뿐입니다.
A high-level delegation from South Korea is set to brief the North Atlantic Council, which is NATO's main decision-making body, about Pyongyang's troop deployment in Russia. This comes after the U.S. expressed grave concern over the possible deployment of North Korean troops against Ukraine. And the delegation is expected to share its assessments regarding the North's troop deployment and their activities. Support measures for Kyiv are also expected to be discussed, including sending a team of South Korean intelligence and other officials to Ukraine to monitor North Korean troops. Ukraine earlier said that around 12,000 North Korean troops were already in Russia, with training taking place on 5 military bases. Separately, Seoul and Washington have confirmed that at least 3,000 North Koreans are now in eastern Russia for possible deployment to the Ukraine war. Ukraine claimed that the troops have begun to move to the Kursk border region in western Russia, where Kyiv launched an incursion in August. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin has not denied any of the claims so far. He says it's up to Moscow on how to implement a treaty with Pyongyang that includes a mutual defense clause to help each other against external aggression. The Chinese and Indian militaries have almost completed their disengagement of troops on the much-contested Himalayan border. That's after a landmark patrolling deal was struck between Beijing and New Delhi last week, ending a 4-year military face-off between the two. Troops are being pulled out from the last major friction points along the line of actual control, located at Depsang and Demchok in eastern Ladakh. The process involves both sides dismantling temporary structures, including sheds and tents used to store equipment, vehicles and personnel. Once cross-verification of the deconstruction has taken place, official acknowledgement of the disengagement can occur. You remember tension in the area has been high since the Galwan Valley clash in 2020, where at least 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers were killed in the first deadly military confrontation between the two since 1975. Hazy skies greeted residents in parts of India as they woke up to Diwali week. In and around New Delhi, the air quality currently ranges from very unhealthy to hazardous levels, with some areas recording an air quality index, or AQI, as high as 697. The Delhi government has implemented emergency measures, including daily mechanized sweeping of roads, sprinkling water on alternate days, and ensuring uninterrupted power supply to limit the use of generators. Authorities also placed a complete ban on firecrackers to mitigate the issue. Still, the AQI in parts of Delhi crossed into hazardous levels, with readings above 320, as residents complain of breathing difficulties.
पोल्यूशन तो यहाँ पे आप देख ही सकते हो, बहुत काफ़ी बिखरा पड़ा है और इस पॉल्यूशन की वजह से मतलब ऐसा लगता है कि मतलब दम घुटता है, मतलब इंसान का ऐसे जैसे कि थोड़ा सा महसूस होता है।
हम लोग जो राइडर्स हैं इनको काफ़ी दिक्कत का सामना करना पड़ता है, जैसे कि ठीक से साइकिल नहीं चलती, सांस लेने में दिक्कत होती है, प्लस जो है थकावट बहुत जल्दी हो जाती है इस चक्कर में। तो हमको अपनी प्रिकॉशन जैसे बंडाना वगैरह पहन के तो चलते हैं, बट इससे भी कोई इतनी ज़्यादा फ़र्क पड़ता नहीं।
Greenpeace estimates that in 2020 alone, PM2.5 air pollution caused 54,000 avoidable deaths in New Delhi. The problem of pollution goes well beyond India's national capital. Take a look here, some 240 kilometers away in Agra. The iconic Taj Mahal veiled by smog yesterday. Toxic haze also shrouded the skyline of India's financial capital, Mumbai, this weekend. Last year, India was third on IQA's most polluted country list. Coming up on East Asia tonight, painting the town blue, we bring you a Japanese town popular among those who like everything denim. And spooky pets struck the Hong Kong catwalk for irresistible events. I want to tell you about a sleepy seaside town in Okayama Prefecture. Denim, the world-famous fabric, hits an entirely new level of popularity there. Artists who set up shop along Jeans Street showcase Kojima's blend of American denim and Japanese craftsmanship, attracting fans from around the world.
Kojima is a seaside town in Japan's Okayama Prefecture, and the city's blood runs blue. In Kojima, denim has deep roots. Jeans hung above the aptly named Jean Street, flapping like flags in the wind. Kojima is at the heart of Japan's denim industry, hosting 40 manufacturers and stores. Fans call this quiet town the Mecca of jeans. Every year, 100,000 visitors from around the world come to experience its craftsmanship.
This quality is trustful, so many people come here. I think so.
I think in Japan, the denim, they're known for denim quality.
Denim here is more than fabric. It's a craft passed down through generations. Each pair of jeans is made with precision and pride. Companies in Kojima, like Momotaro Jeans, focus on monozukuri, the art of making things with care and dedication.
毎日の感ですね。この愛の調子を見て、今日はこれが調子悪いからこの紙は今日は使わないとか。
Okamoto's hands are stained blue from years of working with indigo. He treats the dye like a living thing, constantly adjusting it for the perfect color. The indigo shade called Japan Blue is famous worldwide. It's a deep, rich color that can't be replicated by chemicals. Kojima is also home to the iconic brands like Big John, which dates back to the 1940s. The town supplies high-end fashion labels, including Gucci. But jeans here come at a price. A pair can range from 33,000 yen, about $230, to above $1,400 for those made by master craftsmen.
同じリズムで流れとるのに違う音が入る時があるんで、こんな耳栓しとっても聞こえるんですよ。それで修理してます。
Many craftsmen still use vintage Toyota looms. Spare parts are hard to find, but these machines produce a unique texture. Japan Blue, the company behind Momotaro Jeans, made 1.6 billion yen in sales last year. 40% of their sales come from overseas customers, drawn by the promise of quality and craftsmanship.
一番はやはり長く使えるということを大前提に全て私どもは設計してるんですね。でもしかしたらそれは日本人の気質かもしれない。それは私の試験なんですけど。
For Kojima, denim is more than fashion. It's a way of life built on tradition, hard work, and attention to detail. From Japan Blue to the world, Kojima is determined to leave a legacy in global fashion.
Right before we go, Halloween celebrated in parts of the world this weekend, even though the official day is this Thursday. Trick-or-treaters and partygoers in costumes took to the streets, but not in Shanghai this year. Police patrolled the city's downtown streets and, according to Chinese social media posts, detained partygoers. Some said they were forced to remove their makeup at the police station. Shanghai's downtown areas saw heavy police presence over the weekend, with crowd control barriers in place. City authorities did not officially ban Halloween celebrations, but business owners reportedly received notices not to organize costumed activities to maintain good social order. Last year, crowds filled central Shanghai, wearing Halloween costumes, some of them poking fun at the Chinese stock market and the country's strict COVID-19 controls. Different story in Hong Kong, though, where pets were haunting the streets and strutting the catwalk in the Halloween costume contest. From Chinese-style zombies to pumpkin witches, these cats and dogs flaunted their best outfits, teaming up with their owners to compete for the best-dressed title. The parents and the spooky fur kids walked the stage in front of an audience and a panel of judges as well, where they were assessed on costume creativity and interaction. The winners of the competition, a poodle and its owner, whose outfits paid homage to the local movie The Vampire Returns. No losers, though. Organizers say they hope the event can create special memories for families.
我哋真正希望咧，可以寵物同埋人類咧都能夠有互動啦。跟住另外就係喺藉住今次呢個 Halloween 嘅 gatherings 咧，就希望啲寵物同埋主人咧係可以能夠創造一個美好難忘嘅回憶嘅。咁然之後咧，同埋就係我哋希望可以咧令到人類咧多啲關注究竟寵物同埋人類嗰個之間嘅關係啦。
10 points for being so adorable. Well, that's East Asia Tonight this Monday. Don't forget headlines anytime on CNA.Asia, Facebook, YouTube, and X. Bye-bye.